Roll tape. Oh, now I got to wait. Hurry up and wait. You got to wait for the TV. Ready? Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to the 4 p.m. study session for the September 11th, 2007 City Council meeting. Roll call, please.
The record will show that all members are present except for Council Member Daigle, who will be here shortly.
We'll be here momentarily. Okay, let's move on to items for clarification on the consent calendar. We'll start with Council Member Henn.
Yes, I had two items here for clarification. Item number 7 on the Back Bay Science Center. There were $236,000 of change orders on this, increasing the total amount. And I was not clear to me in reading the memo who will fund this additional cost. Is it Fish and Game that will fund that because it has to do with the administration wing? And how much of the total $1.6 million of cost will be funded by others? I was just a little unclear on
All right.
I do know that the overage won't be funded by the city. It was because there was funding that was obtained during the process that wasn't there initially from Fish and Game that we got to add the other wing. I'm sorry?
The teaching lab that was added on. I believe it was somewhere in the neighborhood of, I want to say $800,000 that was added to the project, if I'm quoting that right. But we'll get that number for you, so you'll have that.
I think I'm okay. I mean, you're making it clear that the city is not going to bear this additional cost. Okay. And then on item number 11, on this bulkhead work, I noted that there was only one bidder, and especially considering it came in 39% above the estimate, the engineer's estimate, I was curious about why only one and why we should still go ahead in view of the high estimate.
Council member, this is kind of a specialty item, and I know Don Webb could probably chime in here as well, but we don't have a lot of folks who actually do bulkhead work in this city that are competitive. Our jobs are considered relatively small by the big companies that work in, say, Port of Long Beach or Port of L.A. So typically we get one bidder. It's usually John S. Meek. The same thing happens with our pier repair project. The good news is that they have a very good track record of doing excellent work in the city, and we feel that the costs are competitive. So we don't feel that if we rejected the bid and went out again, we wouldn't get a different result.
Steve, I think you told me also that maybe there were some people looking at bidding, but they would have used Meek also, and when they found out he was going to submit a bid, they backed off because they were going to use him anyway.
That's correct.
So we did distribute it widely for consideration by bidders and...
Yes, we did.
Okay.
I would like to chime in that in the 25 or so years that we've been working, Meek has been an excellent contractor and has been one of the few that would ever get in and do some of these marine-related items, which are considered specialty in the industry.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Councilmember Curry.
Just a note on item 15, the artist is with us today from South Dakota. He'll be here to make a brief presentation about the design of the memorial.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Selich.
I have nothing.
Councilmember Webb. Councilmember Daigle. Councilmember Gardner.
Yes, I have two. On the minutes, if we have a misspelling, did we do that? Clarify that now or in this evening? Just a name.
Now it's fine.
Okay, Tim Payone's name was misspelled several times. It's P-A-O-N-E. And then on number 5, which is the Newport Coast landscaping contract, at our meeting of the Newport Coast Advisory Committee yesterday, the Newport Ridge Association representative expressed concerns that the annexation agreement was not being lived up to. We were supposed to be keeping landscaping maintenance at the same level. Trees were being trimmed 2 years intervals instead of 1. This is something we will be discussing further. I just didn't know whether that would affect the letting of the contract in any way, so I wanted to raise that issue. I see Mark shaking his head, so okay. Okay.
Okay, that's all. Let's move on to our first study session item, status of improvements to development review, plan check, and the permitting process. Sharon, are you handling that?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This goes back to 2002 when the staff developed a task force that looked at ways that we could improve our turnaround time and our service to customers on plan check and permitting. And they instituted a number of improvements and also the goal that we would complete the first review of plans within 4 weeks, 90% of the time. And they also instituted, in order to achieve that goal, we made a switch from sequential review of plans where it goes from one department to another to everybody looking at it at the same time. And then that, of course, increased our paper handling, and we needed a new position to deal with that. And that did help us for a period of time. But then as the workload continued to increase and we realized we weren't just dealing with a peak, but The high level was just going on, and we weren't necessarily keeping up with increasing our staff commensurately. We were starting to get more complaints. So in 2006, the city retained Hogle Ireland to do a review of our permitting process, and then that was presented to the City Council. And in the written staff report, I've summarized the major findings from that study. One of the things that the council discussed when they received that evaluation was how we should handle improving our interdepartmental coordination, and the decision that was made was to not go to a community development department, but instead to keep with mostly our existing structure. And so the city manager asked me to take on a greater coordination role with the planning, the building, and the public works departments. And he also directed the staff to define standards for what we would consider excellent service and to design a process that would achieve those standards without regard to department lines of responsibility. And so the staff embarked on another effort with a brainstorming session of all of our staff where we added some ideas to some of the things that Hogle Ireland had come up with. And then we established 2 staff task forces who have been meeting every 2 weeks since February. And you can see in the written report an outline of a number of the improvements that they have already implemented or we are in the process of implementing. And the people who chair those 2 task forces are here today, and I just want to make sure the council recognizes them. Suzanne Cusick from the Building Department has chaired the Workflow Task Force, and Dan Campagnolo from the Planning Department has chaired the Technology Task Force. And each of those groups has several people from all the departments involved in the process. I'm not going to take the time to review the list of things that have already been implemented or we're in the process of implementing, but even I was surprised when I was preparing the report at how long the list was, so I think those 2 groups have done a great deal of work. One of the major issues that has held up the plan check process has been in the planning department, where we have historically not had enough staff to keep up. The building department had increased their staff years ago, and they are also better able to use outside consulting services to help with the peak workloads. And while planning has done that to an extent, it's really more important to have in-house people because the zoning code is more particular to Newport Beach. The City Council approved 4 new positions for the Planning Department in January, and we really struggled to fill those positions, and we are just about there, as well as having made some changes in assignments that help out. But one of the things that we're seeing, especially recently, as people are coming in with projects that are subject to our new coastal land use policies, is that it's offsetting the increase in staff resources as we have new things to deal with. It takes time for the staff to understand them. It takes time for the staff to do the research to find out what the answers are for these property owners. So that's something that we will continue to need to keep an eye on. What I'd really like for this City Council to focus on today are the recommendations that we've made for things that will require more resources to make further improvements, particularly the short-term recommendations. And the first of those is to make additional improvements to the public counter area. The Public Works Department could be better situated to provide better public service. We also want to make some changes to the entry doors to give us more room to put people and handouts and things, and also reconfiguring staff workstations behind the public counter. As we're digitizing more of our records, we think that we can get rid of some file cabinets and give a little bit more elbow room to the staff that works there. We want to continue to develop and update public information, to have handouts, to have things on the website that are available to help people understand what the process is. There's a very strong interest and commitment on the part of staff for more training programs. The first thing on our list is for customer service training, but there was also a great interest among the staff people, and I sat with the workflow task force, and the people from all the departments there were very much interested in learning more about what is done in the other departments and what are the things that other departments look for so that they can help tell the customers what's required instead of having people make more stops. I think I see a question.
Yeah, as part of this, I remember the original consultants' recommendations, and they were talking about policy and procedure manuals, and we didn't have them in a couple of the areas. Have we begun to develop them, or do we have them now?
The planning department has a draft of theirs, and that was finished some months ago, and we've just gotten so busy with other things that we haven't had the time to finalize that. The Public Works Department, you do have one?
Yeah, Public Works, we have a manual, but it does need to be updated. So we're working on that, too, with the reorganization as well.
And the building department was probably in the best shape of all on this score. But one of the things that we talked about just today in the workflow task force meeting is that it needs an update now to memorialize the recommendations and the improvements that that group has made. So there's still more work to be done in all the areas on that. In the original staff report, we said that we wanted to investigate the project manager concept that Hogle Ireland had recommended, but in the supplemental report for today's meeting, we did have some time to explore that further. And while we think that it would really provide a good service to our customers, we just don't see how we can do it with our current staff and workload, because what we would need to do to have somebody coordinate projects is to take time away from either the discretionary review cases going to the Planning Commission or take time away from doing the plan check. And we just don't think that that's a very good balance. If it's something that we want to pursue in the future, then we probably would need another staff position to do it, and that raises the question of where we would put this person. We also want to continue to look at the Development Review Committee. There were some ideas as to whether we could formalize that more, have a minimum amount of information that's required from the applicant, have some kind of follow-up reports. The way it's working now, I think that developers and property owners think it's a very valuable service, but the people on the staff think that we might be able to get more out of that if we spent some more time on it. Another one of our significant recommendations is to establish a new position that we've called an application intake coordinator. We think that this person could provide service to less experienced customers who come into the counter and really don't even know who they should talk to and in what order. And this person could also help us do some things that we have trouble doing now, and one of, I think, the real important things would be to screen applications as they come in so that we make sure we aren't getting started on something that's incomplete or put something into building plan check only to find out weeks later that it needs some kind of a discretionary permit because it doesn't comply with the zoning code. And that's something that we estimate would be at a cost of $80,000 a year. Another suggestion is to think about closing City Hall offices every other Friday so that we can maintain the 980 work schedule for our staff, but to eliminate confusion for our customers and inefficiencies among the staff. The way we need to do this now, because we don't have enough people to provide coverage, if half of the staff was off every Friday, for example, is we have essentially a quarter of the staff off every Monday and a quarter of the staff off every Friday. And when applicants don't know the schedule that their plan check person or their planner is on, they come into the office looking for them on those days. They are frustrated that the person isn't there. They don't understand how the 980 schedule works, and they view it as just a day off. And when we try to have other people fill in and help out, then it takes them away from their own work, and they're inefficient in helping the customer. We know that would be a really big change, but we do think that it would help with this problem. Another recommendation is to simplify the zoning code, and we are working hard at that with some members of the City Council on the General Plan Implementation Committee. And simplification of the code as well as implementing the new general plan is one of the real focuses that we have.
Which I found to be a terribly complex task.
It is. Some longer-term recommendations are to do more improvements and make better use yet of our geographic information system, and also to look into converting to electronic submittal and review of plans. We've now had presentations from 3 different vendors on that, and with each vendor, I think we get a little bit more optimistic that this is something that would help us and we might be able to do. It would involve a big investment in hardware and software as well as training, because this would be a completely different way for people to be reviewing plans as well as submitting them. And we would have to have a pretty good transition period, because some applicants will probably never want to switch over to electronic, so we'd have to maintain the dual systems for both for a while. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the plan check monitoring reports, which is something that Councilmember Daigle had asked for, and we have now given you those for 2 months in a row. And what it shows you is the total number of plan check applications we've received during the past 30 days, the number of plans that are pending review in each department on the date of the report, the number of plans where the review was completed by each department during the reporting period, and the average and median number of days it took for those, and then the same information is also displayed graphically. I think that overall we're doing well against our goal of 4-week turnaround for the first check in 90% of the cases. If you look at the average and median review times for all 4 departments, we're within the range of 2 to 17 days. However, both the building and the planning departments, who have the more complicated reviews, do have some reviews that have taken more than 28 days, and also some plans that have been in for longer than 28 days. For the reporting period we're looking at now, which was the 30 days ending September 7th, some of that is explained by the number of people who had vacations during August. The planning department had absences for some other reasons, including maternity leave, that cut down on their staff resources available. And then again, the application of new policies, and we've also had to use some of the planning staff on Plan Check to help out with the intense residential occupancies ordinance. But still, I think that we're doing well overall. There are a smaller number of cases where we don't do so well, and those stand out. Those are the complaints that I'm sure the council members hear. Those are the complaints that the city manager and I hear. So we're continuing to look at ways to improve that situation. And as I said, what staff is really looking for from the council today is your direction on our short-term recommendations. And there are a number of us who can answer questions.
Yeah, I just have a quick, how, I know you're talking about the goal is, I guess, 30-day turnaround on the initial plan check. How are we
Yes.
doing on the follow-ups?
Those are harder to track because I think we do show in a computer spreadsheet when the plan came in, when it was available to pick up corrections, when the corrections were actually picked up, when it was submitted again by the applicant, and then the same thing over again. And it's just so much data that we haven't yet found a way to summarize that for you. If you're interested in a particular case, we can go into that spreadsheet and pour through it and find out what the reasons are.
I'd be just more interested in knowing from the time that the applicant returns it to the time we send it back to them. Like, they get their first round, and then they get some plan. You guys do some stuff to the plans, and then they pick up the plans. They do whatever their changes, and they may take a day or they can take a month. That's not our fault or problem, for the city. But certainly, once they return it to the city, I'd be curious as to see what the turnaround time is on the second and third and fourth submittals.
I think that's a very good point, because we don't want to so concentrate on the first turnaround and making those 20
Right.
days, that costs us on the back end of the
Right, we don't want to lose the
additional
forest for the
review.
trees here. And
Well,
also, I'd be curious to
Before
know.
you leave that one,
Sure.
excuse me, I wonder if Building Director J.L. Batar could say something about it, because he has taken the lead on these monitoring reports and understands that programming better than any of us.
Thank you, Ms. Wood, Mayor Rosansky, members of council. Such a report is doable. However, it will be very difficult to understand its content without actual interpretation of each case-by-case basis. For example, the applicants sometimes do not pick up the plans in most cases unless all the departments are done with their rechecks. So if we, for example, have the fire department done in one day and building is taking 2 weeks, the applicant doesn't pick up the plans until everybody's done. So it's not going to reflect what each department performance is. And again, when the applicant picks up the plan and keep them, as you mentioned, Mayor Rosansky, for an extended period of time, sometimes up to 4 to 5 months, we have to go in and specifically look at that project and look at the numbers of days when it was returned and when it was picked up and when it was returned again. So it's doable, but it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just concerned, my only interest would be, when did they drop it off, and when did we let them know it was ready to be picked up again? And, because, I mean, I understand that one department may be quick and the other departments may be slow, but that's the overall performance of the city, and, you know, the applicant doesn't care whether it's building or planning or fire or police or public works who's holding it up. All they know is that they waited a week or 10 days or 3 weeks or whatever it is to get that second and third, you know, submittal back to them.
Well,
So-
what we've done so far is by each of the 4 departments involved, and maybe if we were to eliminate that specificity and just try to look at it overall for the returns, it might not be as...
Yeah, I just want to know the date they brought it in for the second review, and the date it's posted online, is that how we do it, or we call them, or?
Well, we both. We generate a report when everybody's done and notify them, and we also post it online.
Okay, well,
But I think we need to also understand as staff what benchmarks we're looking for and what time periods we want to see. This council wants to see something over 30 days or over, because you're talking about a huge number of records. We did one query on Friday, and it was returning 37,000 records. I mean, we need to establish a criteria for what we are looking for specifically, and not just a blanket, you know, every project coming in and going out. Maybe a definite time period, anything over 30 days, anything over 60 days, so we can at least narrow down the volume of the data and the reports, and we can come up with something that's meaningful to you and that you can assess.
Well,
what
how
you're looking for.
many plan checks, I think it's, the information's in here, but do we have, like, active plan checks at any given time on average?
It could be around 2,000,
Really, that many?
yes.
Active plan checks?
We get 200 average a month, and some are approved right away, some are not, but some linger, so it depends on the time period. If the smaller the time period, the smaller the data. If you're looking for a 6-month range, you may get 1,500. If you're looking for a year range, you may get a huge number of data. So I think that needs to be, and we can come up with suggestions and to you, but I think I just want to throw that out. So.
Well, if there's some way you can come up with some kind of indication as to how, if we're improving the turnaround, the second and third and fourth turnarounds as well. And also tagging on to that, whether we're improving the number of turnarounds. Because I know that was a complaint there for a while. I don't know that it still is, but people were saying, well, you know, we get these plans back, and there was inconsistencies between the departments. We had to iron it all out, and that would lead to second, third, fourth, fifth rounds of plan checks, because they said, well, why wasn't this picked up when we submitted it the first time? Why are you doing it now? And so I'm just curious, and I don't know if we can quantify it or not, but as to, are we working on that aspect of the problem, trying to coordinate better so that there aren't as many multiples of the plan check process? That would certainly speed things up as well and create less of a burden on all the departments, if they don't have to, if you have to touch the plans 5 times takes more, I think, than probably 4 times or 3 times, and so that's
More
another-
handling time.
More handling time, right? Refresh yourself as to what the issues were and all that, so I'd be curious to.
If I could chime in, though, Mr. Mayor, you have to really be kind of careful here if we're measuring performance on second, third, or fourth check, because now you're introducing another factor which is beyond staff's control, which is the quality of the work. If you take 2 plan checks, let's say a plan check goes in first check, it gets thoroughly checked, there's relatively few comments. When it comes back, it might be very easy to quickly respond to those comments and see that they're correct. We have other plan checks where the second check is virtually as onerous as the original check because so many things have changed. So a lot of it depends on the quality of the plans being submitted. And sometimes whether we get second, third, fourth, or fifth checks is really the responsibility of the architect submitting, because we quite often find that there are comments that are not addressed through several checks.
No, I understand, but I mean, I think the overall goal here is to hopefully streamline our process, make it our time with the plans as quickly as possible. What they do in their end is problematic, for them, but that's not our problem. I mean, it's a problem for them to the extent that we don't address all of the issues the first time, and then they say, well, where did this come from? On the third round, all of a sudden, now you're asking me for this. That, I think, is our problem. But if their architect is busy and he sits on the plans for 2 months before he touches them again, or if he touches them again and only addresses half the issues, that's not our fault, that's not our problem, that's not something we can really obviously deal with. I'm just concerned about the overall trend. Is it are the actions that we're taking or being implemented moving us in the direction we want to be going? Are we actually shaving a day off the turnaround time, or 2 days, or whatever it is?
I'd just like to add, I agree with Director Badum and his comments. I think the number of corrections and iterations directly relate, you all should agree, to the quality and completeness of the plans. And in our city, we do not screen the plans at the intake point. We take everything. And we go through later and sift through and try to get things
I understand, Jake.
Sometimes some other jurisdictions do screening at the beginning and they refuse incomplete plans. And
Well, then maybe we should be doing
And I
that.
think that's one of the task force.
Okay, but I guess what I'm saying is, that could be true, that the plans come back and they're defective for whatever reason. But if they sit on somebody's desk for a week before they look at them to say, these plans are defective, then that's a week that we've wasted. And so I'm saying, well, maybe we can shave that week to 4 days, or whatever it is, or are we doing things to be able to get to the plans quicker and say, okay, yeah, they're bad, here, take them back again, rather than having them sit, because that's their complaint too. They say, well, if I made mistakes or I have errors, why did you take 2 weeks to let me know? Why don't you just give it back to me, or give it back to me in a week or 5 days or whatever? So.
Well, that's why we're recommending the new staff position, so that we'll be able to do that.
Okay, great.
Can I follow one more train of thought there?
Please.
Jay, it has to do with outside plan checkers, and then the rechecks, I think, are most of the time done in-house. And it seems like, a number of times maybe they have missed something initially, and then new things are found, and that generates a lot of complaints that way.
As we're going through with consultants, we've recently have 2 consultants. One declined to serve us anymore, and another one who's refusing to take plans. We try to get more consultants on board and train them, and they are not aware of the specific unique requirements to the city. And as Mr. Bluda pointed out, we do a completeness check where we see if something is missed relating to a seawall or a construction in the bay that is unique to Newport Beach geography. And we find it, and then the applicants get disappointed and they complain because now they felt they were approved, as Mr. Bluda pointed out, and now they find out they missed something. So it's, it's an issue. I mean, again, using outside consultants is not really the best thing that we do, but we do it because we have to.
Councilwoman Daigle?
Well, I appreciate the hard work of staff. Plan check's a grind. It's a really tough thing to be doing. And, whatever you need by way of recommendations, the technology, the training, the counter upgrades, I'm very supportive of, and working together constructively. And certainly my interest in improving this process, I think, is first of all so that our residents who are seeking more expeditious review of their projects, secondly, we're able to permit in a consistent and timely manner, and then thirdly, as the Assistant City Manager mentioned, on another front, we're simplifying our zoning code. So those are all steps that we're taking to improve that. Now, I think the committees there, the task forces with the mid-junior level is a great idea. They're the ones doing their work, and I'm very interested in their feedback on how to improve that and how we can put some of those in place. The idea of an intake coordinator, I think, is good. I'm sure that we get a lot of half-complete plans because, you know, people just want to get a kind of a place in line there. I had a couple of questions. I did speak with the person that conducted the evaluation, and one of the ideas that they had was sorting, you know, where we have a system where we sort, you know, over-the-counter, simple, complex, more complex. And I'm particularly interested, you know, for example, in over-the-counter, which I think it kind of takes a certain attitude to do. People have to be willing to come to the counter, issue an excavation permit, issue patio covers or whatever. How are we looking at that issue of being able to sort by complexity and pushing more of this over the counter?
We do, if you look at attachment 5 from the original staff report, it's our plan check tracks. And we do have over-the-counter, and it tells you what types of projects are eligible for that. And if you look at the graphs on the monitoring report, all the ones that are way down at the bottom for one day are the over-the-counter ones.
Okay, great.
And then we have appointment plan check, and for projects that are a little bit more complicated but still don't need to be taken in, you can make an appointment with the building plan check engineer and the plan checker from the planning department and someone from Public Works. So, you know, all in the course of an hour or so, unless there are corrections or they discover something that needs to go back, you should be able to get your permit. Okay. Then there's another category that's quick checks, and those can be completed in 1 week. And then we have where you can pay a fee for overtime to have it expedited, and then there's the regular plan check. In addition to those, for quite some time now in the building department, within a week of submittal of plans, the deputy building official has been reviewing everything and sorting them to get the easier things to move faster. With some changes in staff assignments and the way things are done, especially for the zoning administrator and the planning department, they have started to do that too. So that should ensure that the simpler things can go more quickly. In fact, I was upstairs in the planning department last week, and one of the plan checkers had just come upstairs with her arm full of rolled up plans. She said, I looked in the bin, you know, I'm in between big projects, so I looked in the bin and pulled a few short ones. So I think that's working both with our check and with staff initiative like that.
And then I had a couple questions for the building director. I think with the database, we really made a lot of progress with the reporting, because what we've been able to do is to take new plan checks, report on the turnaround time by department, establish a standard of 4 weeks, and then receive a regular report on that. So that is great progress, and I appreciate your work on that. My question is, when I was looking at those charts, it seems to me, for example, you know, you have 100 plans from planning that they've plan checked, let's say. And I think to Mayor Rosansky's point, you know, 80 of them kind of get churned back into a second round. Okay, so we have this volume that keeps going out there, and, you know, what you're saying, over 1,000, perhaps a couple thousand. And I know we've had some conversations with this, and I appreciate the complexity of trying to come up with something that's meaningful, you know, and maybe there needs to be more time to do that, but I think we would be interested in, you know, how long it takes second, third, fourth round by department, and, you know, how we're going to sort of get a grip on the volume and being able to establish a standard for our community in terms of getting the permits. I don't know if you had any comment on that.
Well, I think the comment stands as the same to Mayor Rosansky. You are correct. I mean, since we do not have standards, we do have standards for accepting plans and complete plans. But since we don't screen for them, the likelihood of having plans coming into the system and approved from the first go-around is minimal. I mean, there's no way. So every plan is taken in today is going to go at least through a second round, unless it's approved over the counter. So when you go through second round and third round, the volume multiply or quadruple, and it is in our interest to receive complete plans. It's better for us as a city, as a service entity, to approve these plans first go-around or at least second only. And once it gets beyond, it's just really very time-consuming and unproductive. So I agree, again.
And my other question, I appreciate your putting together that database, and I'm very impressed with what you've been able to put together. And I returned from a conference at League of California Cities, and I went to a panel discussion on CIP and benchmarking and standards. And this isn't something that we're pioneering. This is something that progressive cities in California are doing. And I'm wondering, within that database that you've put together, and this is, I'm just talking real big picture, would it be possible to get a report where we would be able to look at all the tasks within CIP, for example, drawing up plans, putting projects out to bid? And so what I'm thinking about is, can we look at tasks over time as we're kind of doing with this, within your database?
If I could jump in, Councilman Daigle, the CIP is already, you already have those tools at your disposal. We just started the process where we give you, in fact, in your budget document, there's a schedule. In that schedule, it shows you the design phase, the potential proposed award date of the project, and the construction phase in that schedule. We also have that schedule posted on the website so that you can update it, you can see it in real time as it changes. What we intend to do is give council a quarterly report regarding the schedule and how things might have changed and what the issues are, so that you're aware of projects that might be delayed, or hopefully projects that can be done earlier.
Okay, right. My question isn't just getting at status, but also standards. So, for example, taking a project out to bid, could we, on behalf of our community, say that ought to take 3 weeks? Is that something that you could track in your database and generate a report? I'm just wondering the capability of your database.
Well, first, I'd like to clarify that the database is not really mine, and I want to give the credit to IT department, especially Jackie Luangas-Olofai, and also Brandon from planning. We all work together as a team, so I just take this opportunity to thank them all. But I think it can be done. The system is dynamic, and it can be, and I think we have IT people here, Paul Malcolmus. I think the Acela permit system can track any activity, any project that has any activities, whether it's a business license, whether it's a capital improvement project or anything, and you can compose it and customize it, and we'll do it.
Okay. I appreciate that, and I didn't mean to digress. I'm just sort of following the general theme of how can we deliver more expeditious review of projects, and how can we get these permits out even better. So I really appreciate your cooperation. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, but I have to think that may be duplicating what the Public Works Director is already doing. I'm not sure why we would have it in two different databases unless we're looking for a completely different thing about the CIP than what Steve's already doing.
I think we can work on a Public Works report. What I'm suggesting is, from what I heard at this conference, is that, other councils in California do receive kind of regular reports in which they're able to establish standards from. And to my knowledge, we don't have a standard in our community for our projects, and I think that's really an attempt of where we're trying to go.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Webb?
I'm a little bit concerned that you would request the CIP to be part of the Building and Planning Department issues. Those are databases, true, but they're totally different animals. They're an operation that is completely separate from what the Building and Planning and Public Works Department are processing related to plans. I think that Mr. Badum has indicated that in the reporting that he has put together, or is putting together for us and report to us on a quarterly basis, and I'm sure that he could do it on a every 2 months basis if we required it, but that you're looking at different types of scheduling, for instance, as far as working with consultants and getting plans back and forth from them. It's a little bit different from a plan review process. And so that you're trying to create two different things, trying to create, using one thing, two totally different reports. And I think that if the Public Works Department does come back with what he has promised us, I think that would be good. I have a question, though, is how many man-hours does it take to get all these reports together? Are we using up one full-time person per year to do this? Are we using a quarter of one? Are we using a tenth of one? I'm just kind of curious.
No, to get it started was a big investment of time for Jay Elbtar and Jackie Luenga-Sawafi, but I think, and then getting some bugs out of it. But once the program is up and running, then I don't think it's going to be a big investment of staff time. And as I mentioned in one of the reports, we also think it's a really good management tool for the department directors because they can look at that detailed report, and if they see something that has been pending too long, they can get the plan check number and find out who it's assigned to, talk to that person, and find out what's unusual about it, or just look at the record for how long has the applicant had it versus how long we've had it, and also to see what the productivity is for various staff members.
Just as long as you don't come back for an additional report maker personnel.
No promises.
Councilman Selich?
Yeah, I've got two concerns on the recommendations. One is this formalization of the Development Review Committee. That came out of the Economic Development Committee to encourage people to come in before they submitted applications and submit different ideas that they had and get input from various departments. And I think the more that we formalize that, we end up complicating and maybe discouraging people from doing that. I know that I deal with a number of jurisdictions that have a function similar to this, and there's one in particular I'm thinking of. They've gotten so bad on it, it's been formalized to the point where you have to put up, I think, a $2,000 deposit, and you get charged on an hourly basis, and they now have 13 people in their development review committee. So you got to do 13 sets of plans, and it ends up becoming a very cumbersome type of a process, and it ends up being discouraging for people to go through that process. So I would be concerned that we end up having something that turns into something like that, and it really goes against what the original objective was when we instituted the Development Review Committee. And then the second concern I have is closing the offices every other Friday. I really am not in favor of that. I think we have an obligation to be open 5 days a week. That's when the business community operates, and our services should be available to them. When people submit applications, we should let them know that we work this 580 schedule, and that they should check to see when their project representative is working, or inspector is working or not working, and it's incumbent on them to track that. Maybe we post a schedule or something like that. I'm not sure how we would do that, but I really think it's important that we stay open every business day. That's when the business community opens, they do business, and I think we should be open to serve them, because that's what we're here for, is to serve the residents and the builders and the people that make our city and our economy function. So those are my two concerns.
Councilman Curry?
First of all, I would share Councilman or Mayor Pro Tem Selich's comments relative to closing on Fridays or alternating Fridays. I do business in a lot of jurisdictions where that happens, and it never works very efficiently. Maybe they can, our people can have their working days put on their business cards so people can keep track of that more clearly. And let me just ask, what is our goal? Once this is all implemented, exactly what do we think this is going to mean for an applicant in terms of reduced delay? Is there any kind of quantification that we can point to as a goal for while we're doing this?
I don't think that we can point to a quantitative goal, because the projects vary so much among themselves. Perhaps we could have a goal for the second and third, the rechecks, or perhaps a goal for reducing the number of times plans come back from recheck. But, again, that's as much dependent on the applicant as it is on us. And I also don't think that this process should ever be over. We did it several years ago and made some improvements, and now we've had to do it again to make some more adjustments. There are always new ways of doing things, and I think we should always be looking at it.
Okay, anyone else from council, any comments?
Actually, I had one more thing. On the proposed improvements, I know at one time we discussed just moving the glass panels out underneath the covered area to expand it. It would seem like to me that all you have to do is just frame in the panels and put doors on either end. Yes, you're going to get more people walking through, but at least you could then move your counter out and you could get more space behind the counter in addition to the converting of the director's office. Was that totally eliminated? It doesn't seem like to me it'd be that expensive to put new panels in.
I guess we were just being a little shy and trying to keep the improvements to a minimum on a building that we may not continue to occupy.
Yeah, enclose that walkway, and if nothing else, if we want to cut down on the cross-through, you put a 6-foot wide sidewalk through the grass area, and so people can walk around rather than through.
Councilmember Webb, this was explored to enclose the breezeway and push everything out, as you suggested, or closing the atrium and add more space, which will not serve the customers better, but it will make more room for staff. But I think everything was put on hold in lieu of a new city hall. We did not go further, because at that time it was...
That's at least 2 or 3 years away, and it would seem like to me that if we are looking at a $25,000 or $30,000 or $50,000 expenditure to try to provide more space and better customer service at the counter, that perhaps it's something that we ought to consider.
Councilman Henn?
Actually, I would echo Councilmember Webb's comments in that respect, as long as, we can come back and tell us what the cost is. We can decide at the time, but I would hope that that would also open up more flexibility for better service to the applicants as well as more room for staff. And I would echo Councilmember Selich's comments regarding the 980 and closing the city on Fridays, every other Friday. With regard to the rest of the recommendations, I do commend staff for going after this issue. It's not an easy one. It takes a lot of time, and the time that you take to sit around and brainstorm and figure out solutions is time away from doing the things you're supposed to be doing every day. I sure do recognize that. But draining the swamp is certainly better than fighting alligators over the long haul. So thanks, and keep up the good work on that.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'd like to pose a question to council, and that is on the short-term number 6, the application intake coordinator, in order to see whether the applications are complete. I think of all of the recommendations, that one probably has the most potential for helping our turnaround times and making sure that architects are kind of held to certain standards in order to go through and do the triage and make sure that, yes, these are complete applications and these are not complete applications. So my question is, I know council has already added staff to the planning department. Is that something that you would consider in terms of creating a position to do that intake and initial screening?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Is it your thought in adding this position that you would take one of your very experienced plan processors or zoning person? I can't imagine this person being able to actually do that function without having significant knowledge of the city and all of the departments that are going to be coming in. This can't be a guy that you hire off the street. So it would seem like you would have to pick somebody within the either Public Works, Planning, or Building Department to fill that position and then backfill their position before you could do something like that. At least that's my analysis of it.
What we had thought of doing was adding one position and then having people rotate into this function, because you'd need to have backup as well for when the person's on vacation or ill. And, you know, it might be kind of a welcome change of pace for somebody every once in a while.
My concern would be if the intake coordinator becomes a bottleneck, all of a sudden it takes 4 weeks to see the intake coordinator. And I also agree with Ed, a lot of cities, they set up these committees and pre-application becomes a month process. So I don't want to, my concern is you add another step and another hurdle that all of a sudden is taking a month. So I don't know how you get around that, but that would be my concern.
I guess, well, Councilman Salas.
Can you explain what this person's going to do again? I guess I had a different vision than, from listening to the description and reading the report, than checking applications for being complete. It seemed like a lot of it was to direct people to, you know, the right function when they come into the office and not be standing in line at the wrong service counter. Make sure
It's both. And so we would envision this person being the first person that you would see on your way in, but they aren't going to be occupied with customers coming up to them constantly, so they can be doing the checking as
So
well.
they'd be doing the application checking
Yes.
in the downtime. But they'd be like in some prominent position where people would know that that's the person you go to?
Yes.
Like when you go to the DMV and you have to go to the
Position
little
one.
lady to get a number to go to the right window?
That's another reason why you need to move the wall out.
Is there an estimate of how long it would take this person to do that initial, you know, screening?
I would say between 10 to 15 minutes to look over the plans and make sure all the information required to provide a complete and substantial review is provided. And I don't want to, I'm not going to underestimate the issue of incomplete plans, but I can tell you, we get everything, the whole gamut. Incomplete plans is not really something that we even see unusual anymore, but we get dummy sets, we get mirror image sets that's not readable, and it's compounded problems, because when the backlog is too long, then people want to get in line, as Councilmember Daigle pointed out earlier, and they want to get in line, and then a week or two later, they come in to swap the sets and to bring in the complete set. So missing information is not abnormal, incomplete information is not abnormal, but we also get stuff that's not even readable, just to get in line. And that bogs us down, because we have to create the activity, input the data on the permit system, roll the plans, handle it, and then it's a compounded problem.
It's a big waste of time. But I guess clarify for me, though, if someone's going to come in and it's going to take like 15 minutes to look over a set of plans, I mean, there could be 3 other people that have walked in that 15-minute time period. They're just going to be kind of milling around waiting for this coordinator? Or, I mean, a lot of people wouldn't even need the coordinator. They would know where they were going anyway, or maybe they just need to pick up a form or something, or...
Not everyone
I mean,
is going to need the
I
coordinator.
see his function and I see his function, but I don't see them almost in the same person because of the time commitments. I mean, like when you go to the DMV, you walk in, as soon as you walk in the door, there's a guy sitting there at a little kiosk in the center of the thing, and you walk up to them and you say, I need to do this. And they say, you go to that station. That person is not sitting there, you know, triaging your license application. He just tells you where to go, and then they figure it out somewhere else. But I see, you know, an advantage to your person. Although, I guess my question would be, I'm assuming that this is going to be a time-saving. Reason to do this is we're going to save a lot of time elsewhere.
Yes.
So if we're going to be saving all this time elsewhere, I mean, do we really need to add a position for that, or is it just a matter of reallocating the resources so that we save time on the back end by catching them in the front end?
And not sure we know that question, and I guess it sounds like this position or person would be there, and the person would hand them the plans, and in 15 minutes they would hand them back, or say, yes, we'll accept them. It seems to me maybe like a more realistic standard would be, you know, within 2 days, they would get word whether their plans were complete or not. It may be that there are 3 people waiting to see this person, and, you know, it will take, they can't get to the plans immediately and can't give a correct answer, but just a 2-day turnaround on whether your
Well,
plans are...
even more so than if it's not even something instantaneous. I mean, why do, I guess my concern is going out and hiring another person. We're having enough trouble hiring people to fill the positions that need to get filled. And I'd rather see you just try it as an experiment for a month and just bite the bullet, have someone sitting there and try it, see how it works. Maybe you'll find that, 20% of your plans are going back, and all of a sudden you've got yourself, instead of 1,000 plans a month that are coming in, only 800 now. And so now there's people in the back house that have a lot more time to look at stuff, or at least complete stuff. And we won't need an extra position.
We could do that, but I think that during that trial period, we would slow down on plan check, and so we would have to expect the complaints about that.
Well, I would hope that we'd see an immediate benefit by rejecting plans that were not complete, and that would immediately create a lessening of work to do, or unnecessary work to do.
Eventually, I think that we could see that, but I think initially, there's going to be a slowdown, and so we would have to be willing to live with that painful period and give it a
Well,
real
how long
try.
do you think that period would be?
Couple months?
What I was going to add is there is an indirect benefit to this individual, whoever it may be, or whether it's a new position or not, is that they will provide information to the public, they will provide guidance and facilitate looking at the plan, saying you need this and that, especially homeowners or first-time individuals who are doing projects, they would need help, and they don't understand what energy forms means or where to get them from. So you have a long-term benefit, you have an indirect benefit. You also, when you start sending plans back, I think the tendency out there for people not to make the trip to the building department unless, or the planning or the public counter, unless their plans are complete, because they do not want to run the risk of sending the contractor or the homeowner with plans that will be rejected. So I think you're going to find that the overall quality of plans coming in will be improved. And
Even more reason not to hire an extra person, because
Well,
if you can kind of
but then you can
get rid of the bad stuff, get rid of the chaff and just keep the wheat, then
But then you can shave the backlog, and you will eliminate the third or fourth and on all these, and then it will enhance the service overall.
so then you'll have even more time, because you won't be doing all these, that's what I'm saying, is to me, it seems like a great idea. I just don't know that we need to hire someone to do that, because once the position is there, the position's not going to go away. We now have a position. And so my hope would be that you'd be wildly successful with this, and that you would force people to not come in with dummy plans or incomplete plans or mirror image plans or whatever. They'll take care of that before they get to our office, save you folks a lot of time, and avoid this third, fourth, fifth round of plan checking. That's going to save you folks hours, right? I mean, that's less man hours you're going to need to do plan checking. So, we have other things to move on to, so I don't want to belabor this anymore. Just think about it that way before we decide we're going to add another position. All right, is there anybody else that has any comments on this? Why don't we move on to the tsunami warning system? Oh, is it public comment time? Oh, public comments on this matter. Yeah, sure. Come on down. Sorry, Dolores.
Hi, my name is Dolores Odding. I live in Newport Beach. I just want to commend Jay and the Planning and Building Department. Over the years, I have had many opportunities to go there, to wait in line, to sign the little books. And if I did sign the wrong little book, they would explain to me that it was the red book and not the blue book, but then they would also put my name up into the time area that accommodated me. And it's not the worst place in the world to hang around. They do a great job considering the like the space they have. And they're always very, very cordial. And that's really important when you have to go through that process there, is that they're always very nice. There has never been one person that has been rude. There's been one person in planning that was rude, and Sharon knows about that one, but that was the only one in all this time. And I just think they do a great job. And I kind of think in this situation that if Jay thinks that he needs something, I kind of think that we should give it to him, even if it is a person, because no offense, but if you look at the stock market and what's going on with mortgages and stuff, every single day a person doesn't get their plan back is money nowadays, and the interest rate, I imagine, will be going up one of these days, so it's going to be costing a lot more money. And I'm not normally a person that thinks that we should hire people, ever. But I do really believe in what he does, and a few years ago, he wanted like $150,000, and I said, gee, why don't you give him $250,000, because we need, and in the end, he did get, he did end up getting more money for his department. And I think it's a good idea, John, to bring that out, and we could also give people a buzzer, okay, like they do at the Cheesecake Factory, and we could put a little Starbucks kiosk, and so they go outside and have a cup of coffee while they wait. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Doris, although I believe interest rates are actually dropping, not going up, so. Okay, Chief, come on down. Tsunami warning system. Listen up, Dolores.
I was going to say. Thank you. She's actually, excuse me, Katie Freeman is actually putting the speaker. I've sent out to Mayor and Council all the a little example of the sirens, so I can play it again if you would like, but we get to that point, you let me know.
Why don't we play it for the public so that
So they can hear
they can hear
Great.
it, so Dolores can hear it?
You should have warned us to turn the volume down.
Yeah. First of all, Mayor, Council, I was going to thank each and every one for your presence yesterday. It was appreciated, and thank you very much. It's a nice facility out there, and
Presence at what? For the public.
for the public, thank you very much. At the open house at Fire Station Number 7, Santa Ana Heights. And your support has always been greatly appreciated, and I thank you for that.
Fire does pretty good special events.
Yeah.
You may have to combine fire and recreation.
I think you need to cook us dinner between 6 and 7 in our closed study session.
That would be good. As she's setting this up, I was going to say I have it's kind of a surreal here. Actually, not too far from this time, September 11th last year, I was actually standing here in front of all the department heads who were actually playing your role, and I was in the testing process. It was actually, I was looking at the time, and I was thinking just about now I was standing here doing the testing process. So. Before we get it's coming up, I was going to say that as I was going through this, I had a lot of help from a lot of individuals, and so it's I don't want to be flippant, but a lot of the stuff with the sirens, and we get into the mechanics of it, is pretty easy stuff. It's not rocket science. Speakers are speakers, poles are poles. A lot of it has to do where you put it, and then a lot of it has to do with labor and where you put them and how you put them in there. And I'll talk a little bit about that. Maybe if we can, yes, please. Thank you very much. I'll make sure I get this right. So again, it's pretty simple stuff, but as we get into it, I'll show you a little bit of some of the intricacies of what I do. I want to talk, first of all, just a bit about the approach we're taking, and I am going to get into the mechanics, but philosophically, who I will reference a lot is the city of Huntington Beach. They already have a system in place. They have it across their citywide, and in essence, they're there to alert and warn the public in times of disaster emergencies. And what their approach is, and our approach obviously would be a little different if we're just going to put them on the peninsula area, would be just for tsunamis. But I just want to say, and again, this is more philosophical, is that in the industry and across the nation in regards to Homeland Security, we're taking a more of an all hazards approach, and that was obvious when with Katrina, when we got caught looking into the with the urban security initiatives and things of that nature. We swung the pendulum one way and we forgot to do the other side. So anyway, it's an all hazards approach, and I think that's what necessarily the sirens be used for. Though if we had it just on the coastline, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
All right, so you're not saying that decision has been made?
No, it has not. I mean, so that's why. I would say, in essence, if you're going to look, that's a possibility. Is what are they going to be used for? In essence, what we're talking right now is they're for tsunamis, but across the industry, we're looking at it as an all hazards approach. Real quickly, anytime that we get any activity out in the Pacific, it comes to the Alaska Tsunami Warning Center. It's a federal organization out of the Department of Commerce. Through NOAA, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. It's located in Palmer, Alaska. Obviously, they have things out in the ocean, the buoys that monitor things, and earthquake movement and any wave movement, and that's translated into them making their decisions and sending out their warnings.
Steve, would that be true even if the earthquakes are off of Chile or South America?
As I was sitting here, and I want to make sure that is true, because they do monitor that all down the Pacific area. What they will do is they'll either issue a tsunami watch or a tsunami warning. And the difference is a tsunami watch means wait and watch. It's not significant enough within the parameters that they've set, but they will keep an eye on it. When a tsunami warning goes out, that's confirmation that a wave has been generated. Now, it doesn't mean that that wave is going to cause any damage, or it may, but it does. There is significant movement on those buoys that they're going to send something out because they don't know what the end result is going to be. And I will say, though, that different non-Newport agencies will treat non-confirmations differently. And what I mean by that is if you talk to some cities, they'll say, we really aren't going to do anything until we have confirmation. Well, in essence, by NOAA, when they set out a tsunami warning, by their standards, that is a confirmation that they have something. But some cities will say, well, we're going to actually wait till we see something that hits or there's a result, that there's a wave. In essence, and those are determinations that any city can make. You're now talking about time factors and do you have enough time to do things. So anyway, I'm just saying that that has some ramifications. Even in regards, I'll talk a little bit about our emergency alerting system through K-Wave 107.9 and their interpretation. But per Newport Beach Tsunami Incident Action Plan, the way it's set up in the plan is that if a warning comes across, that is, in here it says that we will evacuate. That's the way the policy says. So we're taking that there is a confirmation of a wave coming, and we're going to evacuate. We're going to be proactive that way. To let you know that the system works, there's the warning center at the very top. That's the Alaska Tsunami Warning Center. It's three-pronged. They're very careful in making sure that they get everything out. And so when they have something that comes in, they have a standard format that they use, and they'll send out a notification. We will get it down here in Orange County through Control 1. That's the county communication. Just like L.A. County has their communication center, we have ours. They'll get notification of that. In the middle there, all law enforcement via the, which is the California law electronic teletype system, they will get notification over that. It's the same system that you get. They get Amber Alert. There's somebody 24/7, I believe at PD, and I don't speak out of line, but they have somebody in the records department 24/7, 365 days a year that's watching that. And if anything comes across that, that comes off and goes to the watch commander. Also through EDIS with the digital electronic system through the state communication, that's sent out. So it's really three-pronged. And as you can see, they go down. Control 1 will notify the emergency alerting system. That's 107.9 K-Wave. They will get notification, and they are the official radio station that will make notification over the airways that something is going on. At the same time, it's going out to all the television. That's why if you just saw recently with the, what was it, the fires? Or I'm trying to think with the heat. They actually had the teletype going across the bottom of the TV so that you can read that. That's part of the system, and it's in place. And so theoretically, when we have our sirens go off, if they were to go off, that's what the people would know, that they would turn to 107.9 or turn the TV on and see what's going on. Again, across the bottom, you can see the police and radio, through the radios are notified, lifeguards, obviously, tsunami, county EOC through EDIS, and all law enforcement. Again, if we get something to come across the middle one there, which is the California law enforcement teletype system, that notification goes to the residents. That comes down to the police watch commander, and that would be coming across that. And that's when, if there was someone going to push the button to make the sirens go off, that's where it take place right there. And by the policy, that's what would happen. That would be put in place, and of course that's to be flushed out because I think the inclination was that person would want to say, I want to ask somebody else, because once they push the button, it begins the process. And so there's an education factor, and we will have to look at that. But as the policy says, that we will make that evacuation, and that's how it will take place. And as you can see across there, all those individuals will be notified through the police watch commander, and it'll work its way down through the city. And the plan is that watch commander would have the authority, because it would be pretty straightforward. It's not a subjective opinion. It will say, this is a tsunami warning, and the tsunami warning, push the button, and that begins the process.
Hey, Steve, a thought just occurs to me, and that is if those warning systems go off, then, getting to the EOC might be pretty difficult and take some time.
There will be some people that have difficulty getting there, and I'll talk about that a little bit, because when we start evacuating, it'll be not business as normal. It'll be interesting.
City Hall was at this side.
wherever City Hall is. I mean, if the EOC with Balboa Island, evacuating, getting to the EOC.
Right. It'll be interesting. Activating the sirens. Upon notification, the decision will be made to activate them. They can be sounded off at a prescribed time limit. That's, like I said, this is not rocket science, and all the companies, the vendors I've talked to, you can monitor them to put however long you want to sound them for. Obviously, we're talking a little bit real quickly, and then about if you have a direct power, you can run them longer. If you're doing it on solar panels, you don't have as long. And that'll be something that we'll talk about, some of the challenges we'll have. But anyway, you can put them on every time limit. And again, the public would know that through an educational process that they would turn on their TVs or their AM/FM radios. And for us, it's K-Wave 107.9, and the secondary is 103.1. Now, that goes back to, I asked them, I said, now, if we have a tsunami warning, you will play that all the time. And they said, well, no, not until we get confirmation. So there we were discussing that a little bit, because they would monitor to be, say, they would get wall-to-wall coverage if they heard that there was something happening up the coast, and then they would send that out. So obviously there's a little bit of discrepancy there that would need to be sorted out, I think, through all the agencies. But I think residents would know that they would follow directions and be prepared to evacuate. Some of the issues to consider, sirens will be in close proximity to residents, obviously. And I will mention a little bit, if you're within, most of these will come up to about 128 decibels within 100 feet. Then they'll fall off as it goes out farther. But if you're living next to it, it's going to be loud. And as I will sound it here in a second, but you can see that it's a mechanical, so it starts up slow and you can hear it. It's not like a blast that comes out and catches you off guard. You'll hear it, starting to come up, and you'll know that you can cover your ears, and you would have to if you were close enough, possibly. The public will receive the warning simultaneously. Obviously, that's why you have the system. You're letting everybody know at one time that they should do something. And again, it should be a very controlled thing, in that they will go and turn. They shouldn't just run and get in their cars and take off. They would turn to the emergency alerting system, which is the radio, go to the TV. There'll be some that will take off, but they can find out what it actually is being asked of them. And again, by our policy, they will be asked to be leaving the area which they are in. So that is going to potentially create gridlock. And I think if you look at the policy, we would suggest that people within an allotted time frame have enough time that they would walk off those areas. That would make things easier. But obviously, most people are not going to walk off. They're going to get in their car and drive. And all you have to do is go down. Obviously, any Saturday, Sunday, you can take a look and say that that's going to be, be a challenge. And if something was to happen, but by due process, we're trying to make sure that diligent. That we're making sure that we do that. That's what they would have to do, and we would address those evacuation issues. It's going to cause medical issues, and that's just something to be accepted. I can only talk from experience, because I know any time in my previous experiences that when you have large, and we don't have a whole lot in California, but large catastrophic things like flooding, rains, earthquakes, the number of calls do come up for heart conditions, asthma, people that are under stress. The call load just goes up because people are affected by it. So that's something to be aware of, and it's not something that would keep us from doing it, but it's just to be aware of that. And it could create panic among some residents, and that's why I think through the educational process you do educate people that it's not a matter of the signs go off, you run for your life. It's a process that you should have a lot of time. You go watch the TV, it says, that we're expecting through the bulletins in 3-4 hours the potential could come, and people have the time to move in a very more of a sane way than just jumping in the car and trying to get out, because that will create the gridlock. I have right here, this was, you can see up in the box, it says T128. That's just a vendor's, that's their brand. And I'm going to show you another one here in a second. But there's suggested site locations, and we can put these anywhere. I mean, this was, again, not rocket science. This one here, you can see that circle is 1.5 mile radius. That's the reach. That's probably about the max you're going to get on a reach on those. And again, I was working within the parameters of the monies that would have been allocated. We're in the 200,000 range. And so what you'll see in a minute is the limiting factor is not the sirens, because the sirens are all not that expensive. It's the poles and those poles that will be more expensive, and I'll show you. But we can put them anywhere. We were looking at suggested site locations, and they can go. City sites would be the more preferred way. This was another vendor. He was taking another approach on how he was wanting to mount those. And I mean, there's some pros and cons on each of the vendors and how they were doing it. There's probably three 3 big vendors that are actually in this, and the nice thing with some of this is that we have an example right next door. And I have John Adler here. He's actually from American Signal. He's the one that they put him in Huntington Beach. But there are other vendors out there in the competitive market. They're all looking to get in. So, and again, I would say no disrespect to American Signal, but a siren is a siren. It's a matter of then looking at to see what best fits us for us. But this is what they were suggesting. They were going with another approach, and they got spread out. And as you can see, we're not covering all of the inundation area, which is all that red area. Again, I was working within the parameters of the monies that we had, and covering the area which was most highly populated. And we tried to get Big Corona, but along the rest of the coast down to Laguna Beach, you can see we're not covering that area. It just would mean that there's more sirens. Some of the challenges is power. When we went to sites, we could actually go, the difference between AC and DC, and if we had direct power, most people, when they put them in, they have a redundant system. They're either having AC and DC. They have their own power source, so if they lose that. But you'll find that I think they said people are actually trying to get away from the actual direct power, because if you have an earthquake, you'll lose that. So what do you do then? They do have solar panels that you can run these things independently on. You can activate them by computer network connections. But then again, where do you find those locations? You start looking down in our inundation areas, there's not a whole lot of places. We got some of the fire stations that we can make those, like Huntington Beach did, but you still have to look at the concentric circles and make sure that you can give the coverage. So that's another challenge. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but looking at all the city-owned facilities, we don't need to put them on those because there's some other approaches. Height, obviously, we want to be up about 50 feet. You start talking 131 decibels. Your normal ambient decibels outside is 70. So 131, you got to make sure that's high enough or you're going to be hurting some people. And again, radio interference, and that's that bullet at the bottom is kind of in conjunction with the one at the top. You can run these on radio, so you can actually stick a pole, and I'm just being hypothetical, but you can stick a pole with the siren and have a radio system in there with a solar, and you can trigger it, and just by a radio using the wireless aspect of just their normal waves. And that's what a lot of people, they said 90% of people around the country are doing that. They're triggering them by radio. So there's a central location that triggers any of the poles. In fact, they have systems in place. You can only fire off 2 poles or 1 pole or 4 poles, anything you want to do. But you do have radio interference. You have to be aware of it. And I've talked to city staff, and they've said that we're using the existing 800 megahertz, and some of those is not, again, rocket science. It's just a matter of working within the system to make sure that you can do it to trigger those. So you could put a pole anywhere, put a solar panel on that, and have aspect of making sure you can control the siren as it goes on and off. A little tough to see. This was a American Signal Corporation proposal. I just wanted to show you that I've circled there in the red the sirens, and you can't read everything, but it was basically the sirens were 47,000, and that was for the 3 that you saw in that yellow. I just wanted to show you, though, the poles in construction with this one here, and then I took that off of Huntington Beach's. That was 150,000 just for the poles. If you were to talk 3 poles, that's 150,000. And those poles, the total labor and materials is about 35,000. And in talking with, this was Source Sunbelt, they put it out to bid in Huntington, and this were the only people that bid on it. So they got the one bid. I've been assured in talking to Steve Miner that with the utilities that if we were to move forward on this, we have another person who does polls with us that would be very interesting in bidding on this. And so they said that they could probably come into the mid-low 20s per pole. And again, the 2 aspects there, trenching and engineering, Huntington Beach told me that they really weren't charged that, but they had built that in there just to cover themselves to make sure, because there was some places not knowing where they're going to put it. So they said they didn't actually pay those. But it's not cheap. We start talking about putting a 50-foot pole up. Then what kind of poles? I mean, you start talking about large galvanized. There are places that I don't know that it would be aesthetically nice putting in a wooden telephone pole around with those on there, but that's done also. I mean, that brings the cost. You'd auger an 8-foot hole, put it in, set it, and that's not my expertise, and I would rely on other people getting that. But that's where the cost was coming. This is Huntington Beach's. As you can see, this is the one they had, the vendor they had, and it is a electromechanical. It actually turns around, goes 360 degrees as it moves around. So there's a moving part on that one. The other type is, and they've talked about electrical voice, and from what I've heard is that, and they actually did a test in Marina Del Rey, and we can ask for that same test, and I can get the results here in probably a couple of weeks, and most of the vendors said they'd like to come in and do a show one-on-one with these, but they actually in Marina Del Rey had them all competing against each other to see what their capabilities were. There is a voice capability that they all have, but it really didn't work well on the coast where they were doing it. Vendors may argue that, but the people that were there said it was a little hard to hear. So I think the vendors are going to use those more. And I tell you, on the college campuses, the voice thing is taking off because of what happened in Virginia Tech. So, but for us, I think the siren is probably all we're going to need. As a power source, they trigger theirs from the station. It's on from their dispatcher, but they can activate them from one central location, which we would do too. This is just the base they put them in. It's pretty elaborate for that size pole. And again, if we have several vendors, we'll get some competitive bids. So I just put up there 3 to 7. I mean, we're looking within the context of the monies we have. Probably the decibels at 100 feet are between 120 and 137. What the mark that they use is that it should always be 10 decibels above ambient noise. I think ambient noise is probably about 60 decibels on a day-to-day if you were to walk outside. I got some facts I'll show you here. But the siren needs to always be heard at 10 above that, so at 70. It always needs. So if you were to go out the farthest reach of that 1.5 miles and you hear the siren, it's got to be at least at 70. Those are standards that are set by FEMA and others it has to be about that much. So it's 130 decibels at 100 feet. Go out 1.5 miles, it has to be at least 70. And so that's why you will see them trying to stack the circles that I had, one upon the other, so they're overlapping, so you get some good coverage, and you're not trying to extend it too far out. I can turn it on if you'd like. You want to hear what it sounds like? Okay. Oh. We'll see how loud we can get it. So you hear it, it'll start slow and it'll wind up. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it blasts out. We'll forego that. This is the volume. That's right.
How do you get the graphics on the pole?
The graphics? That's right. We'll forego that. That's fine. That's fine. Go ahead and turn it off. That's fine.
Is it?
You got it there. So as you can see, it actually has it winds up, so it does give people the opportunity to actually know that it's coming, and it'll keep doing that. And if you have a power source, you can keep running it and running it and running it. If you're working off of solar, that's good. You would have to at some point not be able to run it because you've got a power deep cell battery that eventually would be drained at some point. And again, just for example, our exterior noise here in the city is at 65 decibels per ordinances that we have. So you can see that we're exceeding that, but by law, we're allowed to do that during that, just like we do with fire engines. We're allowed to pass that ordinance then for emergencies. Again, 131 decibels. This is more of a vendor thing. They'll talk about the siren tones at 500 hertz. It doesn't mean a whole lot to me, but it talks about that able to hear into the house. It's not so much the noise, but it's the penetrability of being able to get through the walls, so people inside their house who are watching their TV can actually hear it. These are just some examples of what normal decibels are. And as you can see, we would, there was a party across the street from the other day. I don't know what they were at my house, but it was loud. But I was going to call John, in fact. But anyway, these are jet taking off is 120 decibels. That's probably mid runway if you're about I think it was about 300 yards off there. So anyway, all the sirens can be network based. You can run them off a computer if you want and that would be it the watch commander. Obviously, if the teletype comes through, it's a tsunami warning. They would be able to activate it there from the computer, and they can be done remotely. They can also be done by radio, and it would still be done by that area there where we could go through the wireless, and we don't have to be into a network system if we don't have to. As in Huntington Beach, they test them on the first Friday of every month. You can do it in a silent mode. You don't need to turn them on. Huntington Beach does it because they never want to get caught in the position where a year down the road they had to use them and they've never actually tried them. So they're very careful about that. So if you hear them, and I've gone over and listened to them, and they don't run them very long. They run them probably about for 30 seconds, maybe one rotation, and that's it. They shut them down. But they do run them the first of every Friday. Mass notification resource that can be used in addition to sirens is what we talked about, the emergency alerting system, Control One Cities, Teleworks mass calling system. That's something that's going to come online in 2008. I'll just real quickly tell you that there's that capability. We now use Teleworks here in the city. We use it on a basis through all of our billing. We can send out, we have everybody's phone numbers, and if they're late on a bill or whatever, they can send out a message to them. A 30-second message, it goes out to those homes. And we have that capability. We've bought the capability by purchasing all the phone numbers, and in 2008, this company, Teleworks, and there's a lot of them out there, Reverse 911, a whole lot of them, where they have the capability, and I'm not a telecommunication person, but it looks like they're all using the same basis, which is if you needed to, for instance, 85,000 people in Newport Beach, and we want to get out a 30-second message in 28 minutes at a price, 20 cents a call for everybody. We push the button on that. Teleworks shoots it through, and they said they have relay areas across the United States. It would either go to Denver or whatever, and they can make those mass notifications. They go all the ports because with our normal system, we only have about 8 lines, 10 ports that we use here in the city to do that, and you would need mass amounts. So they're more than happy to tie into the telephone companies to do that, but it costs about 24 cents for every call you make. So you can do the math on the 84,000. Or you can actually just pick a certain specific area and do that too, just on the peninsula, whatever, and make that. So that's coming out in 2008. It's obviously at a cost, but that's a possibility. And of course, the other ones, police helicopter, police and fire vehicles, sirens, and door-to-door warnings would be other ways that we would still continue to do that even with the sirens to make sure that we catch everybody, because there'll be people not knowing what the sirens are on any day with the transient population that we have. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Mayor?
Councilman Webb.
Refresh me, my memory again. When would you use the siren? Would you need to use the siren? Tsunami, I understand, but what other disasters are you going to be able to time these sirens to where it will be an hour before the earthquake?
No, and that's, okay. It is right. And I will say that as I looked at some of the cities that had some of the listings, I think some of them, in all fairness to them, they were paid by UASI grants, and I think they had some tie-ins to that nexus as far as with terrorism to achieve that. But I think that in most cases, some of the things they have listed would be, exactly, if you had an earthquake, I don't know that you would need to put the sirens on. Everybody knows that you had an earthquake. Some of the things they talk about gas releases to notify everybody that there is a gas release, at least a notification system. They could turn on the television, listen to the radio, and it would tell them why the siren's going off. And I think that's the basis. What some of the cities are doing is that they're not necessarily going to be specific to what particular thing is. They'll let the normal system through the emergency alerting system tell them what it is and what to do. So Huntington Beach has a long list of the reasons why they have their sirens.
And one other question. In the last 150 years, I'm assuming that's recorded history, how many tsunamis have we had in Orange County?
I think the last one was in 1964. Yeah.
And what was the extent of that? If I remember correctly, it was less than a foot?
Yeah, minimal damage to Newport Beach.
Okay. I just had to have future planning. If the RFP process, field and site research for siren placement, and then there was talk about and actually fleshing out a little bit. They haven't got back to us. Work with the Coastal Commission if there's any aspect on that would be a hindrance for what we're doing. I don't know that we would. Huntington Beach has it, though their proximity to the beach area is a little further than ours would be in closer proximity, and then public education, educating people on what the whole process is about.
Would it be useful in terms of fires? I'm thinking, of course, of wildfires, the canyon fires. Would that be something else that we might use it for?
It's possible. At the very,
I mean,
it would
what
be
was the
on a-
tsunamis were like number 11?
Right. It was
Okay.
down
Of the
list.
other 10, are there things that we would want, that the sign, we would feel the sign would be helpful?
Well, there are some things. I don't know that would be my first line of attack. My biggest thing is earthquake.
Right.
I'm working under the premise, and as I look at the list, earthquake is my biggest.
Right,
my
and we
biggest
know
thing.
we're not
It's-
going to need a
and
sign.
not
We're
gonna
all
need a
going to be
sign for
aware
that.
that we've been through an earthquake. But
Right.
are there other of those hazards that were on the list that would be also, where it would be useful because it's hard to get the word out door to door and
Right.
helicopters and that, so we want people to tune in.
Right. Philosophically, when I look at some of those, I don't know that any one of those particulars jump out at me, but I look at it more as it's a system that at least tells everybody all at once, go turn your radio on, go turn your TV on, and we will tell you what we need to tell you. So I think of it in terms of more of a warning system that I can get your attention all at once. But as I go through the list, I don't know that any of the ones that I've seen on certain cities necessarily jump out at me and say I would need it because of that. If it's there, could potentially use it. Like when we had the Laguna fires, maybe if I wanted to let everybody know some information, I could put those on. But I think that they would already be watching the TV and following those. But maybe that's something. Some of them I'm just being giving you some hypotheticals, but I'm trying to think of something that none of them really jumped out and grabbed me.
Well, I guess where we have the greatest wildfire potential, we weren't showing sirens that would be covering those areas.
Right, well, that's
And that's
my
right.
point. I mean, if there are areas that we do have areas that, given enough rain and the failure of Prado Dam or something, would be subject to flooding.
Yes, that's right.
Certainly with flooding and wildflowers of a certain kind, evacuation is a very big issue.
Right. I think the one that did, now you mentioned, the one that did, it caught my attention was Prado Dam. I mean, there is the potential that if that came down through that area on the west side, through some of the channels that we have, potentially we could be affected by that. I don't know what the end result would be. So that, that was one that I could say you could at least get everybody's attention and let them know something's happened. Would it have enough time to do anything? I'm not sure. So, but, yes.
Yeah, but Prado Dam is not a significant item because they've also built a dam upstream that helps takes the pressure off of Prado Dam, and I mean, you'd have to have a total failure of the dam caused perhaps by an earthquake at the same time as a huge deluge for 4 or 5 days. So as far as flooding is concerned, we do have some low areas along the Santa Ana River that could potentially have it, but from storms, we're relatively fairly well off. Now, if you had, you got San Diego Creek is the other one, but still, we've had some 100-year storms in San Diego Creek, and we've had some puddles at intersections, but we haven't really had significant damage to property in Newport.
And I will tell you that Huntington Beach has 7 sirens, and they feel that gives them the coverage they need for the whole city. I'd have to go see that myself. So obviously, if you're talking about moving from tsunamis to the entire city, now you're looking at obviously an increased cost. But that's why my first slide was with philosophically, is it just for tsunamis or is it all hazards approach? Because that changes what we do with them.
And do you have a recommendation?
Well, in deference to Mr. Henn, I think that he was concerned, and I think that I actually saw that because the individuals who live on that peninsula, I think that is it may be just a perception, but it is a concern of theirs. I listed as a lower probability of ever happening, so it is a low probability. Doesn't mean it couldn't happen. So when you're asking me as far as the cost invested in doing that, what I would rather invest with somewhere else. I move back up to my top of my list, which is earthquakes. That is going to happen, I can tell you. So
No, I didn't mean to put you on the spot in that way. I meant to put you on the spot in a different way. As far as simply tsunami or citywide, do you have a feeling?
Well, the cost factor to me right now is that if you're going to do it, we can do it for the amount that was previously given at $200,000. I can give coverage in that low inundation area and take care of all of the peninsula. If you're talking about the entire city, that's quite a bit of cost incurred. That's why Huntington Beach actually was depending on the grant that they got through, I think, 3 years ago, so.
Yes, and I'm going to pursue this. Do you think it's worth it? I mean, from your particular expertise, do you feel that the use is looking at the list of the 10 above there, that it really isn't probably worth the value if you, I mean, the best of all possible worlds, we can do everything.
Right.
But we do look at dollars, but we do look at safety. And do you feel that that's not necessary, that we have enough other tools?
I think that it'll have a role. I think if we're going to have tsunami, it's not a bad idea. Again, I always want to put the best bang for the buck, and that's at earthquakes. And so that's where I think the thing is at earthquakes, but rather than a tsunami. But
I think one other way to answer that is that the issue's never going to go away until we get some kind of warning system. That's the only way for people to say, okay, then the question is, do you go community-wide?
But that's why it sounds so attractive as far as the type of technology in 1998 where you can have telephone messages out there.
2008.
Or 2008, excuse me. Oh, well. At any rate, it would seem like to me that that can be almost as effective, or would probably be more effective, because you hear a siren and you still don't really know what's going on. At least the phone message gets a little bit more specific.
yeah, I don't think we've even addressed the educational factor. That's going to be continually, always ongoing, because there will be a generation after generation. Yeah, there'll be a lot of educating to do.
Particularly when you have a situation like we do on the peninsula, where you get large numbers of visitors, and they aren't going to know what it is all about.
And would not know in a telephone notification system because they don't live here. So it seems to me that this is an issue that has to do with peace of mind as well as actual protection. I think it's a little bit specious to be speculating about what kinds of disaster might happen when. Disasters happen in all sorts of ways that are completely unpredictable, and I just don't think it's useful to speculate about the nature of a disaster. When you look at the geography of the peninsula, Balboa Island, West Newport, the ability to help yourself is already limited because of the highly impacted ingress-egress, and any sort of a system that can provide at least a head start with public education about how to go about it and what to do is of value. And so, I remain a strong proponent of this. It's not that expensive. It's a one-time cost, essentially, that buys a lot of peace of mind as well as real value in the event of a disaster. I do think we should be looking at this not just as a tsunami warning system, but as a hazard, a broad-based hazard warning system, if you will, because we don't know what the hazard is that's going to cause large-scale problems.
Yeah, I didn't mean to suggest that wasn't. What I was trying to find out was, is it better if we go with a citywide because of the hazard warning aspect of it, rather than simply labeling it a tsunami warning where it's very narrowly tailored to the peninsula?
Yeah, which I would be in favor of, as a broader view of this issue as a hazard warning system.
Councilman Curry?
Well, I'm inclined to support Councilman Him's thoughts on this matter, although I leave it to him to find the exact locations to put these sirens on the peninsula. But let me ask, go back to 1968, because I know we had air raid sirens that went off like clockwork once a month. We all sort of knew what they were. Have all of those assets been taken out of the community, or are they gone? Or?
Yes, they're all gone. Most cities have taken them off their buildings. Some of them wish they hadn't, because there actually were still some that Huntington Beach had one on one station. It was still actually fairly functional. They did have to upgrade it, but the sirens themselves are pretty base. They don't change much, but most cities have taken them out for the civil defense aspect.
Councilman Sellers?
How many other cities and coastal beachfront cities in Southern California besides Huntington Beach have a siren system?
Huntington Beach does, San Onofre, so that actually comes all the way through San Clemente. One vendor has that. I don't believe Dana Point does, Seal Beach does, Long Beach doesn't. Up the coast, I'd have to go look how many further do, but in Southern California, Huntington Beach right now and San Clemente are the only ones that have them. San Clemente has it because of the power of the
The
nuclear
nuclear
power plant.
reactor, right?
Yeah.
It's not for tsunamis, really.
No, it's not for tsunamis.
It's all only for
Because
nuclear.
most of San Clemente is pretty much up off the thing, so they actually will only sound it for the nuclear power plant.
One just quick comment, because the poles do look fairly substantial and they are kind of expensive, and maybe we can kill two birds with one stone here, and assuming we do move forward with this type of system. I know a lot of times cell companies are looking for sites for their cell towers. Maybe we can get them to front the cost of this and bootstrap onto that. If you're going to have a pole, you might as well. Looks like a fairly thick pole, too.
It is
to get
very substantial.
wires and things inside, so I would imagine, Leslie, you probably know more about that than I would.
Yeah, you could have like a palm tree siren.
They do make those.
But, I mean, it's something to consider. I mean, and we actually might even be able to make some money off it, at least on the space on the pole, so.
Perhaps. I have just a comment. The second piece to this, the public information, I was talking to Matt yesterday, our community preparedness coordinator at the fire station dedication, and he told me he went out to 80 groups last year, so I think that's great. And because certainly the second piece of this is when the siren goes off, what do you do? And some of us need to know what to do there.
Right. And there's the component, too, that we still be working the streets with the police and fire units. The visitors come on the weekend. They're not left to their own devices. I mean, we will be notifying them to the lifeguards, going up and down the beaches, and things of that nature, too, so.
Thank you, Chief. All right, we have 12 minutes left before our study session ends. Is that enough time now for the presentation that, oh, that's right, we do that? Oh, then we'll have even less time, so
Can we,
I would imagine that
can
we're
we
going to have
punt
to.
again?
Yeah, we're going to have to continue that item.
I'll be really brief. Thank you, Councilmember Hen, for pursuing this topic of emergency preparedness and warning. I think it's extremely valuable considering that we're a coastal community. And I know that we have telephones, but we found out with Virginia Tech that all the cell phone towers got jammed. And I don't know how many students are there. I don't know if there's 83,000 people there. But we also live by an airport, and God forbid we ever were to have some problem with a piece of a jet falling somewhere within the community. There's all kinds of emergencies, and you don't know what they are. And $200,000 of a $210 million budget, it's kind of embarrassing. I know you think we never are going to use it, and I hope with the grace of God that we never do use it. But if we need it one time, then it's worth $200 million if you save somebody's life. Mariners Park tonight is going to get improvements of $786,000. We also have Revo Alto coping replacements. I'm sure these are all necessary things, don't get me wrong, of $836,000 for a bulkhead repair. And I could go through every single agenda item, and you know that I will if I have to, because everyone in the community wants this. And I know you're our elected, like representatives, and sometimes it has to be for the good of all people. And there's not a person that night, okay, that lives on the peninsula when we had a council meeting and they were trying to get out that didn't wish they had something that notified them. It just gives, everyone will feel safer. I know, and you know what? Safe is something that you feel. You can't tell someone they're safe. They have to feel it. And just the fact that you would go out and make this expense for the community would get you some good brownie points right now. So anyway, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dolores. All right, I'll have public comments on non-agenda items. Seeing no one, we're adjourned till 7 o'clock.